Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Reckless Optimist podcast. My name is Megan. I'm a family nurse practitioner with a deep passion for mental health. On this show, we showcase guests who have shown tenacity, grit, mental strength, and who embody the word resilience. A quick disclaimer before we start. This show is not a substitute for mental diagnosis or treatment. We do recommend that if you're struggling with your own emotional well-being, you see a mental health provider. I'm so excited that you guys are here. Let's get into it. Hey, everyone. Today on the podcast, we have Joshua. Joshua is a really interesting guy. He is an author. He just recently wrote a memoir about his relationship with recovery and alcohol use disorder. He is a musician. He's a drummer. He grew up in LA in the 1990s music scene, which definitely played into his issues with addiction and mental health. His story is really interesting. He is an introvert. And so a lot of the recovery groups require you to have to speak out and talk. And that didn't really resonate with him. So he kind of forged his own path. And I think that's really cool and really interesting that there's not just one way to get sober. It's not linear for everyone. I like to think of all of the different sober groups, which we have so many now, as like different players on the same team. We're all on the same team, but we all have different positions. And the way he describes his is really interesting. And if you're more introverted in nature, I think you'll track with him and his story. So I know you guys are going to love it. Let's get into it. Hi, we're so excited that you're here. I know you through the online recovery community, which is a huge, expansive, amazing network of people. And I see that you're also an author.
Yep.
Yep.
I certainly am.
I love it. What's your book called?
It's called Last Call Stupid.
That's a great catchy title, punchy title. I love that. Is it a memoir?
Memoir mixed in with a little instruction on how I got over my alcohol problem.
Okay. And where are you coming in from?
I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. I am currently residing in Long Beach.
Okay, California. So I have only been to LA one time, and I didn't intend to go to LA. I was leaving Montana. I was trying to fly home to Georgia, and they flew me. This is Southwest. No offense to Southwest. I actually like Southwest. They flew me to Las Vegas. Have you ever been to Las Vegas on a Sunday night?
Of course. Vegas is like my backyard because, it's a 4-hour drive. 3 if you do it right.
On Sunday night, it's like a sea of zombies, though. Like everyone's hungover and broke, So then I went from Las Vegas to Los Angeles. I'm like, we're not going. I think Georgia's the other way. And so I was rerouted to LA. Anyway, I ended up getting home to Georgia at like 5 a.m., had to work. So I'd like to go back to LA, but not on those terms.
No.
Seems like
Well,
a
I
fun
mean,
place.
so you didn't get out and walk around. You saw
No.
LAX?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So no, you haven't been here.
I know. I want to walk the streets and see a celebrity.
Yeah, well, it happens frequently if you know where to go. Los Angeles is huge, so depending on which area you go to, that is going to highly predict what kind of experience you have.
Okay.
It
Well,
can be really bad or fantastic.
okay. It's kind of like Atlanta's kind of like that a little bit. Well, I'll come visit and you can show me around.
Cool.
So we're going to start our episode out with a quote like we do. And the quote for your episode is from my favorite book of all time by Kristen Hanna. It's called The Great Alone. Have you ever heard of this book before?
I have not.
Okay, so she writes a lot of historical fiction. This one's actually a really interesting book about a young girl. It's like a coming of age story of a family growing up in like rural Alaska in the 1970s. And her father obviously has some PTSD from the Vietnam War, but severe alcohol addiction and anger issues. And it's just this beautiful story of coming of age and addiction and mental health. And there's a quote in the book that stopped me when I read this quote. It's at the end of the book. I was just crying, like tears running down my face. And so the quote goes, "Once you've been in the darkness, you learn to appreciate everything that shines." What does that quote mean to you?
Well, a lot. I actually mentioned that kind of in my book. Once you've been in the depths of hell with yourself, everything seems easy. You know what you're made of when you have scraped the bottom of your soul, just wallowed in misery for years, like I did. You get a new appreciation for things when you crawl yourself out of that hole. It's just a whole new perspective on life and everything in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think what the quote did for me, it kind of put my whole story into view. So, it's been a while, right? I'm 6 years sober, but I can still remember that girl. I remember how lonely I was, how miserable I was, how just destroyed. I was destroyed physically, mentally, spiritually. I was a shell of a human. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I mean, my eyes were, I have giant eyes anyway, but they were dead. They were dead inside. When I look back at pictures, there was no light. And, I think coming out of that and even just like going through that, like you learn to have empathy for yourself and empathy for others. And you learn to
Yeah.
appreciate the good moments when you've been in the dark depths of hell of your
Hmm.
own suffering.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, I love that quote. Highly recommend that author. She's great. Well, I am very excited to hear your story. So, wherever you feel comfortable, just take us back.
Well, it was a long, long time ago. Like I said, born and raised in LA, and I've been playing drums since I was, I don't know, 9 or 10 or something like that. Started playing shows when I was about 11 and just doing music, trying to, be a rock star my entire life. And through high school, I didn't really drink. I was out man out. I was actually straight edge. Like within the punk scene, there's a like a subgenre called hardcore straight edge, and that's like you just smoke, you don't drink, you don't do drugs. And for me, that was like the most contrarian thing I could do because being punk rock is like all the norms, and everybody was partying, so I went the other direction until I hit 19, and I was like, oh, fuck it, everyone seems like they're having fun, so I dove head first off the boat or off the wagon, and I didn't get myself out of that hole for a little over 20 years. Um, and it was just a wild ride. I had a lot of good times. I'm not going to lie about anything. There's a lot of fun when you're in your 20s, 30s, playing shows, going on the road, doing all the fun things that drinking entails, and then drugs follow that pretty quickly. But it just wears you down. The fun part in your 20s and into your 30s, it quickly turns into self-medication, and then that turns into just a nightmare. And it just robs you of your potential. And for me, I got stuck in a rut. It becomes a routine. It becomes this insidious, habitual automation that you just live in. It's like you're on a track, and it's you don't think about it because everybody drinks. My parents aren't alcoholics, but they certainly drank because it's everyone did. It's just there was nothing out of the ordinary. So it's ubiquitous. It's always around. I let it get a hold of me, but it was kind of more like I wanted it to. I wanted to live the life. I wanted to be the fucking drunk, obnoxious rock star. And I certainly was. I wasn't famous or rich or anything, but I certainly act like a dickhead rock star a lot. It was part of the life. Like I wanted to be that. I wanted to embody the whole rock and roll vibe. Basically, my drinking ruined pretty much every relationship that I was ever in. And it was serious when I was in my mid 30s. It completely derailed and deteriorated like a 5-year relationship. And the relationship I had after that destroyed that too. And that was when the last girl I dated when I was still drinking didn't drink that much or party that much at all. And it really showed a light, like put a mirror up to me and made me realize how much I drank. Like I knew I could outdrink basically everybody, but when you're around someone that's not trying to keep up with you like everybody else did, I only hung out with people that wanted to debase themselves as much as me. And, this one girl didn't. And I felt like a degenerate. It's like, wow, I'm coming to terms. I'm coming to the realization that I can't really live without this anymore. It's not something I want to do. It's something I have to do. Like I got to that point, and she broke up with me and said, I think you can quit drinking. And I think that was it. I think that was the last straw. I took that as a challenge. I never wholeheartedly tried to stop drinking before. The only spurts of sobriety that I ever had was when I was in jail for DUIs. I got 4 DUIs in my tenure as a drinker. It was never something that I wanted to do. I literally thought I was going to die with it, probably die drunk. And then it got to the point where I was so sick of it. I was just so over it. And when someone told me I couldn't do it, I was like, fuck that. I can do it. And I did. I haven't had a drink in almost 6 years, like yourself. Next month
Wow.
is going to be six
Oh my,
years.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So you're June 2019.
Correct. June
Yeah.
25th to be precise.
Okay. I love that. So that's long-term sobriety. In the medical world, that's clinically long-term sobriety once you get past 5 years. So
Cool.
look at you, new level unlocked.
Yay.
That's awesome. Wow. So tell me about that first year. So did you do a program? Were you seeing a therapist? How was that first year for you?
No, I did it completely by myself, and that
Wow.
was actually the purpose of writing my book, because the traditional routes didn't really suit me. I had been to a ton of AA meetings because I was forced to by the courts because of said DUIs. And I'm not a particularly religious fellow, and I know it's you can interpret it however you'd like. The powerlessness thing, that wasn't a good message for someone like me. And I also isolate. So I don't really talk to anybody. So the group setting wasn't necessarily comfortable for me either. I was able to maintain, I was able to, during the work week, I was able to regulate myself down to like two tall cans of beer or 1/2 pint of vodka during the work week, like Monday through Thursday. But then Friday to Sunday, I was blackout drunk. So I don't know where you want to throw me in the category of alcoholism, alcohol use disorder, however you want to phrase it. But all I can tell you is I had it bad. And the last time I drank, I tripped, I hit my face on the sidewalk, I messed up my knee, and it was the literal and figurative hitting rock bottom. And that's when I was like, you know what? I'm going to see if I can dry out for 30 days because I had never given it a shot. And after I made it past the first week, I knew I wasn't going back. And what I did was I buried myself in self-help books, YouTube videos. I just read and watched everything that I could. Philosophy, personal development, discipline, stoicism, Buddhism, any positive thing I could get my hands on, and not being bored. That was a huge thing. Keeping myself busy, waking up early, exercising, and just filling my day from 5 a.m. till 8, 9 o'clock at night, just perpetual motion. Because I knew if I slowed down, boredom will get you. Idle hands are the devil's plaything, right? So that's why I made sure to keep busy, and I did it. Like I said, after that first week, I felt so good. I wasn't fully chemically balanced yet. That took probably about 90 days before I really felt like a human being again. But just not being hungover and waking up 100% that first weekend that I stopped, that was everything. That became the catalyst and the bullseye, the target that I wanted to continue striving for, is that feeling.
I love that. I know exactly what you're talking about. I had a very similar experience in terms of the feelings that I was feeling, and just like I felt like shit for so long. And then to finally feel good, I'm like, oh, is this what other people feel? Why
Yeah.
have I been putting myself through this hell for so long? Yeah, that's super relatable. I wanted to speak on something that you talked about because I find this extremely interesting. The powerless. No, that's step number one in AA.
Yep.
You have to
Mhm.
say that I am powerless over alcohol. That was my biggest held up. I could not physically say it. I could not get past step one. For me, it was the fact that alcohol had already taken so much power from me. How dare I give any of it back? I'm not giving you any of my power back. You can't take anything else from me. So for me, I couldn't even say the first step. What was your experience with that?
Well, I never said it because I don't believe it. And I've heard a lot of people, talking to other people that have gone through the program. I can understand their perspective, but I don't find it wasn't a healthy thing for me. As far if you do any sort of like personal affirmations, or if you're trying to manifest or just start your day with a meditation like I am abundant, I am grateful, I am such and such a thing, you would never put I am powerless in an affirmation. Um, and words matter. There's a million studies out there that talk about how you speak to yourself and the words that you choose. Your subconscious listens to everything. And saying something that you can't do something or you're powerless, especially if you say that like to a child, that can kind of set them off course into a direction that they otherwise wouldn't go if they felt empowered to do something with, and those tests have been done countless times with like grades and things like that. And for me, it was the same thing. Like I said, someone said to my face, I bet you can't do it. I don't think you can quit. I was like, watch me. And another thing with that too is even if you are in a group, you have a sponsor, you have all the stuff, at the end of the day, it is only under your power that you are not going to drink unless you are medicated or physically restrained. It is still your control, your power not to pick up a drink. Because the bottom line, the last thing, or the only way you are not going to put anything alcoholic into your mouth is by your own will. So that's my perspective on it. And I also think that people that use that like I'm powerless, it kind of gives an excuse for them to fuck up and relapse. They can go back like I couldn't help myself, I'm powerless. But some people can use that as kind of an escape route,
A crutch.
sometimes.
Yeah, that's interesting what you're talking about. I do think for some people it's extremely empowering. Even we could even discuss the word alcoholic. I also don't identify with that word. Yeah, I feel like an addiction is an experience, not an identity. And that's super empowering for me to feel that way. But I understand, I can see the perspective that other people have and how that can be empowering for them. But it's just not my story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you that words can be powerful. And yeah, for me, it's like I can be in a room with alcohol and 100% say no. So it's not taking my power for me. I couldn't rationalize that first step. I really struggled with it.
Yeah. Of course, to each their own. I mean, I don't even like using the word sober either. I don't like alcoholics, sobriety, recovery. I choose not to use any of the terminology. I quit drinking and that's the end of the story. As far as the subs go, there's a lot of gems you can mine out of that AA cavern, but it's a little intense. So for someone like me, and it's one of the reasons I wrote my book, it's wanted to address the people that drank heavily, maybe had some issues like me, like legal problems and fucked up jobs and relationships and things like that. So there there's so much nuance as far as what you would consider a problem with alcohol and just so many different levels of it. And I feel like the person that is the weekend warrior, where alcohol is an insidious problem in their life and it's slowing them down, robbing them of their potential. They don't want to be deemed an alcoholic, so they just continue drinking. I mean, I'm choosing to tell my story to help anybody I can. But my message is also, you don't have to shout it from the hilltops if you don't want to. You can just quit drinking and move on with your life. And that's it. It can be that simple. And I feel like those people like myself, it's not really addressed. Stop for 30 days. See if you can stop for 30 days and then see the difference. Go from there.
Yeah. How did your book come to be? Kind of describe the premise of your book, how you wrote it. What was that process like?
Well, it was about a year after I quit that I thought of the title. And then I just kind of worked from there. I didn't want to glorify drinking. I mean, I share a lot of stories, the fun stuff and the really bad stuff. And I just wanted to be relatable. I wanted to tell my story in a linear timeline to demonstrate how it deteriorated my life and how it just got worse and worse and worse. Like it went from the fun to the nightmare to the, I quit. And I wanted to share exactly how I quit for anybody, like I said, that didn't relate to meetings or didn't have a strong enough problem to go to rehab or inpatient, it was something that extreme. So I wanted to write a fun story, hopefully get a few laughs out of it and some information, because I did a lot of reading and I just wanted to impart the wisdom that I had collected on my journey.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. What was the writing process like? Did it take, years? Did you have to shop around to different editors? How did that work?
Well, yeah, it took about 4 years to write. I admittedly wasn't very disciplined. It took me a while, like writing. I'd never written something like this in this capacity ever. I write songs and do stuff like that. I have my whole life, but a book, it was quite a big undertaking. So I slacked off a bit, but once I got the ball rolling and I got the structure for the chapters and how I wanted to address and compartmentalize every part of the journey, that's when it became easier. And then I self-published with KDP, and I got two editors, one of which is my really good friend, and another one was an editor that I found on Reedsy.
Okay. That's awesome. So I wanted to ask you a few more questions. You had mentioned you had read a lot of books
Yep.
in your first year. I'm a big fan of self-help books. I might have read every single one, so I might be addicted. What are some of the books that you read that first year that were the most impactful to you?
The grandfather of all self-help books, it's called Psycho-Cybernetics by, the last name is Maltz, but it came out in the 50s, I believe. And when you read that, it kind of sounds like the blueprint of all self-help books. It seems like everything is derived from that. And then like 7 Habits of Highly Successful People and How to Win Friends and Influence People. Those books, even though you wouldn't necessarily think they're synonymous with recovery or getting sober, the structures that are placed in those books are just a fantastic foundation. From like Mel Robbins, David Goggins, Unfuck Yourself. There's a ton. There was a guy, he had a channel on YouTube, I think it was called Alcohol Mastery. I believe the guy's name was Kevin O'Hara, and he was just this dude with a selfie stick walking around a forest talking about his drinking problem. And it was the first time I'd heard someone say, "Oh, I'm not powerless. And I'm not calling myself an alcoholic." And that was the first time I had heard someone say that. I was like, finally, like, this is the guy. This is what I needed to hear. And I think I don't want to butcher anything. He does have a presence online, but Kevin O'Hara, I believe, is his name. And he was a fantastic influence.
Okay, I love it. What are some daily habits that keep you sober to this day?
Waking up early. That was one of the things I first implemented. And that's basically in every self-help book you'll ever read too, is wake up early. So I started waking up at 5. I still do to this day. I mean, even on the weekends, I have to wake up early for work, but even on the weekends, I still wake up, 5:30, 6 o'clock. That is a tremendous help. It feels like you have a head start on the entire world. Everything's so still and quiet, and there's a calmness at around 5 a.m. right before the sun is up that is unparalleled to any other time of day. Like, you cannot find that stillness anywhere. So that's a major one. Exercise, of course, no matter how you want to do it, weight, cardio, just taking a walk, anything. And of course, your diet and nutrition is extremely important. And all those things sound like, so, oh yeah, we've heard it before, but dude, that's it. Like, that's that's how you have a healthy life. And the exercise takes care of so many of the mental problems, and it just anxieties and stress and all the worry and anger and all that stuff. If you push that energy towards some sort of physical activity, that alleviates so much stress out of your life. And it's just these things that you used to drink for that you thought the alcohol was helping, which it wasn't. It was just burying all that further. It becomes this swamp in your head that you can't really navigate out of. And just diet, exercise, waking up early. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And not being bored. That's a huge one. Make
That
sure if you're quitting anything, like cigarettes too. I got hypnosis in my 20s to quit smoking. You have to replace a habit with something else. You can't just leave a hole in your routine. So if you are looking to quitting something, make sure you have something to fill the time with, because you're going to have a lot of time. The first few weekends I quit drinking, they felt so long. You don't realize how much freaking time you have until you have it all back because you're not drunk or passed out,
Or hungover.
So much time.
So much time to do other things. I think what you're talking about is so important, though. Set yourself up for success. Go ahead and pick out some habits to try. That's what life's about, experiences and being curious, Pick up yachting or sailing or crocheting
Yachting. You can't get a meeting, go yachting.
or like paint by number, something to keep your brain busy. I think you're bringing up a really good point about boredom, because that, I think ultimately what causes people to relapse is boredom, not dealing with your stress. And then one I do think is important is being connected to some type of community. And that maybe not be everyone's experience, but I guess you could kind of flip that around for your experience and to not isolate or to feel that you're alone in your own suffering or in your own experience.
Yes. I mean, I found all my support through books and YouTube videos. So in a way, I was in a support group, but the information is vital. Like you need that. And if you're someone like myself, if you go the Buddhism route or Stoicism, there's some great foundational spiritual, if you want to use that word. I know that's a kind of a loaded word for some people, but just get a sense of connectedness to at least who you are, because those are two pretty powerful guides to deal with the philosophical areas of your life, because you need that too, even if you're not necessarily a believer. Buddhism and Stoicism and just philosophy in general is going to be a huge support for you.
Yeah. You had mentioned growing up in the 90s as a musician in LA. I'm
Yeah.
sure that had a catalyst effect on anyone with alcohol use disorder. What do you think your why was, though? Like, in terms of drinking isn't necessarily the problem, it's the ineffective solution, that whole idea. What do you think your why was?
There was a lot. I mean, I have suffered with depression, and when I started to drink, that manifested itself into suicide attempts and cutting and all sorts of stuff. So it was depression, not wanting to be like everybody else, but just wanting to not feel like me, like just getting outside of my head, because I'm pretty introverted when I'm not on a stage, and that like alleviated that. It got me out of my mental cage. But then the why was turning into self-medicating to try to push down the depression and try to push down the unease with existence and try to wrestle with all the existential questions that one may have, especially myself. It turned into all sorts of ugliness.
Yeah, you're not alone there. I mean, I think that story, I've heard that before, from
Yeah.
other people. It's interesting about being a musician and being on stage and a public persona, because I mean, I've never been anything like that, but I could imagine the dopamine hit you get from being on stage, playing your music for these crowds of people, and then you get off stage and you almost crave that same dopamine hit. I mean, you got such a huge surge, and alcohol and drugs can do that for you. And you see that a lot with musicians and actors and people in the public eye. Do you feel like you were in some ways experiencing that too?
Well, as part of the lifestyle, plain and simple. If you go on the road, you're in your 20s, you're going to party. Like that was my first experience being drunk for 30 days straight. And you have the backstage parties, you have people that, you're going to drink. It's almost inevitable. You have to have some ironclad morals in your 20s if you're not in it to do that. Well, at least back in my day, back in the 90s. It's just it's what you do, and then it turns into why you do it. It's the party. It's just a lifestyle, and it's no, it's attractive. All the I have some really interesting stories, some of which I share. I reveled in it. Like the more fucked up my story was, the funnier I thought, it was. I almost lived to outdo the last stupid thing I did. It's just, at least that was me. That's how I lived, waking up, missing my pants more often than I can count, things like that. It's just rock and roll and partying it's hand in hand.
How has your life been now in recovery, 6 years in? How is it different?
Well, I don't feel like shit anymore. There's mental clear. I mean, it's a night and day difference. And I knew it, like I said, just a week away from alcohol. I was positive I wasn't going to go back. And I've never had a relapse. I've never had a sip. I've never even thought about it. I was so sick of it. It was scorched earth for me. And I never think about it. Like, even the first time I went to Vegas after I quit, it was only 3 months. After I quit drinking, to solidify my statement to alcohol, I bought myself a motorcycle, which is something I avoided doing while I was drinking because I knew I would probably die or, get mangled. I was like, I'm going to ride this to Vegas. So I rode out. And right when I got to my hotel, all the lights and all the old triggers were popping off. I was like, fuck, maybe I shouldn't have come here. And then I I went to the pool and I saw it was a group of like college kids and they were pissed drunk. And it was like 2, 3 in the afternoon. And I was like, I am so glad I am not that right now. Like, I know exactly how they're going to feel in a couple hours, and they're going to wake up feeling so terrible. And I was at that moment, I was like, I have made the best decision ever. And then waking up in Vegas on a Sunday morning, 100%, I was like, what is this? What is this feeling? I couldn't, it's almost living an entirely new life because you're experiencing all that you've done your whole life, but in a completely different perspective. And it's almost like you get to live again, but this time you're conscious for it. This time you're present and you get to remember, like, I don't remember half of my life, basically. It's night and day, like health wise, your skin gets better, you're cognitively sharp. It's just night and day different.
Yeah, I always likened it to a superpower. I'm looking around,
Yeah.
everybody should know about this. Why has no one told me about this? This is totally a life hack to be able to go through life and experience it in this way and to like, not numb all your senses all the time. I can hear and I can see, and look how green that tree is. Has it been green this whole time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and then I mean, there's some scary stuff you have to confront yourself too. You have to deal with the wreckage of your past and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's scary too. I mean, not a lot of people want to do that. Not a lot of people want to admit that they have a problem. And it's facing yourself is a big one. But after you do that, that opens up more doors too. So that's all part of the brand new healthy you after you quit the sauce. You have to do a lot of repair work, especially someone like myself that drank heavily throughout their 20s when that's the most like developmental art. Your brain's still developing. I was drunk for all that. So I had to relearn who I was and deal with my problems in a healthy way instead of burying them with drinks.
I love what you're talking about, relearning who you are and finding who you are. How did you do that? What modalities helped you go deep and get to the depths of your own soul?
Well, reading a lot in the past years and just writing things down, being aware of yourself. If you're having thoughts and feelings and realizing that the thoughts are not you and then trace them back to the wall, follow the cord to the wall and see what's happening and not emotionally reacting to every thought in your head. And just figuring yourself out.
I love the analogy that we are the sky and our thoughts are the weather that just roll in, right?
Yeah.
So we're not attaching to them. They're going to roll in and they're going to roll out, but you are the sky.
Yeah, exactly.
I love also too, you mentioned you were an introvert. I am probably the exact opposite of that. I'm an extroverted extrovert, but I know a lot of introverts. I make friends with them. And it's interesting though, because you mentioned, the community and the AA and all of that. It's not the best scene for an introvert. So having someone like you to come out and write this book for introverts in recovery, I think is extremely helpful because sobriety looks different on everyone. Recovery is not linear. There's not just one way to maintain sobriety. I think that's cool that you're an advocate for people that are more introverted in nature,
Yes, the response I got has been tremendous and so heartwarming. When it first came out, it actually debuted at #1 in the recovery section on Amazon. So that was
wow.
Cool. It was really cool for a day.
Yeah, no.
Actually,
That's pretty cool.
2 days. That was really cool. The responses I got were just so heartwarming and humbling. And it was the exact reason why I wrote the book. It's like so many people said my life was almost like parallel. Thank you for writing this. And it's just, it gives me goosebumps because it was my exact reason for writing it. And like you said, once you stop, you want to shout it from the hilltops. I feel so good. And this is not a drug. This is something that you can do. And that's why there are so many people out there that want to spread the good news. Have you heard the good word, brother? And if you don't want to do that, don't do that. But the point is, like, for me, at least, basically everybody that has quit something that was so damaging to them and they got through it, it's something that you probably didn't think you were going to make it out alive from. I 100% thought I was going to die from this. If it wasn't by suicide, it was going to be because I floated my liver, whatever. I did not envision a life without alcohol being a part of it. And then boom, just out of nowhere, it wasn't even premeditated. I hit my face and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna see if I can dry out. And that was it. And it's crazy because I did not think I was going to make it out of the hole I was in. And then once I got out, I was like, this is amazing. And I wanted to, share my story.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What about the girl? Is she still in your life? Does she know that you're sober? Does she know the impact that she had on you?
No, she is not in my life. We still kind of hung out after I quit drinking for a few months, but there was still skepticism and it didn't pan out. There's no hard feelings or anything like that, but yeah, it's funny how that worked out. If I had met someone else that just partied as hard as I did, like my usual profile, I'm the degenerate one. Everyone was all lovely, but they were lovely people, but they partied as hard as I did. If I hadn't have met her, I might not be talking to you.
Yeah, it was a coming together of multiple things, I think. All the parts of you, metaphysical, physical. It wasn't just one thing. All of the elements came to be for this to happen.
Exactly. And then once you start seeing those things, I mean, not to get too hippy dippy, but as you read like Carl Jung and stuff like that, you start looking at the synchronicities and, take that with a grain of salt. But you can see these little signs here and there that kind of point you I mean, everything makes sense in hindsight, right? You can only live life forward, but it's only understood backward. And I see these pivotal moments in my life and it's kind of interesting. And then once you have that framework or that interface to like try to map your present moments in, then, you can kind of maybe put too much stock in little stupid things that happen, but it's kind of fun to try to notice.
I'm a big fan of Carl Jung. I used one of his quotes for one of my episodes a few weeks ago. Until you make the subconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That was something that he said. Amazing. He was a psychologist, analytical psychologist.
Yeah. I have one of his quotes in my book too. No tree can go to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell.
Interesting.
Start my book out.
Okay. I haven't heard that one.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. Well, I am so thankful that you came on and shared your story. In writing your book, it just serves grace, that all of the things that you went through, quote unquote mistakes, they served a purpose instead of serving shame. Yeah. I think that's really special. But we've made it to the lightning round of our show. So I asked every guest the same 5 questions. So just let me know your answers. You're given 3 options. You have to shark dive, bungee jump, or skydive. Which one are you choosing?
Well, I've already been skydiving. Underwater is pretty scary, so I think I'd choose the one I'm more scared of. So I would do shark diving.
Okay. All right. It is pretty scary under there. I just got scuba diving certified.
Oh, nice.
And it was hard. Where I thought I was going to go splash around in a pool. No. It was like 5 days of intense training, but I did not see a shark. All right. Number 2, you're in a simulation. Every time you walk into a room, the same song plays. What's your song? I know you're a musician.
I'm in a simulation every time the same song comes on, like my theme song.
Like you're at bat music, but you're in the future and the robots have taken over.
I don't know. There's so many. I mean, does this song represent me or is it just a theme song?
You're walking in a room and I had my medical assistant. She had a good answer. She was like, I would want spa music because it's calming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many directions you could go. There's so many Bad Religion songs I would choose, but also like Enjoy the Silence by Depeche Mode. Okay. Might be the good one.
Is that punk rock?
Depeche Mode?
Yes.
No.
What kind of music is that?
Dark wave, new wave.
New wave?
Okay. You know their songs. So look up Depeche Mode. They're prolific.
Okay. I'll check it out. Number 3, what is your favorite Disney movie or Pixar movie?
Actually, you know what? My favorite one that I just watched in March is Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
Oh, I haven't heard
of that one. No, you haven't. That movie single-handedly changed America's perception of leprechauns. So look up Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Sean Connery's in it.
I love Sean Connery. Yes. We have the same birthday. He was the best James Bond, I thought.
Cool. Yeah. But now you can see him.
Some leprechauns. All right. Number 4, what is something you're obsessed with?
Consciousness.
Okay.
Thinking just why we have it, what it is, consciousness. I'm obsessed with looking different perspectives on it.
That's a good Yeah, no, that's a good obsession to have for sure. I love that. No one's ever said that answer. I like it. Number 5, what does freedom mean to you?
Ooh, well, I mean, yeah, there's so many different spokes to that wheel. Just being yourself, being unapologetically yourself. And if no one likes what you're doing, if someone has a bad opinion of you, let them have it. Being who you are and true to your nature is freedom and truth. Just being truthful almost to a fault is very liberating.
I love that. I love that so much. That was great. Where can everyone find you, find your book?
Last Call Stupid is available at Amazon and Barnes and Noble. The audiobook hopefully should be done sometime this year. And you can find me at Joshua Dean with 2 E's, Joshua Dean Official on Instagram. And I think I'm still alive on TikTok somewhere. And that's it. Oh, my website, joshuadean.com.
Are you dictating your own audiobook or do you have someone
Yes, I am. And it's a
Okay.
pain in the ass. So I have just gotten to a spot. I just moved. So my old place, it was way too loud. I was right on a busy street. So I'm just now setting up a little studio nook in my new place. So I have proper silence and air, and I'm trying to knock it out.
Okay. I love it.
So I'm
Awesome.
making myself accountable now by saying this on the podcast. It will
Yes.
be done this year.
Okay, we're manifesting it. I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. You're going to help so many people with your story. I really appreciate you sharing it.
I hope so. Thank you, Meg.
Yeah. All right. Bye.